battle. Few outside the army ever heard of these men, the disorderlies as they were called, or knew that in the tongue of the Greeks they were called the atacti, and that Alexander gave them all the posts that brought great danger for little honor. Many died, but some did not, and there were always more sentenced to join them. These were the soldiers who came, sent by Alexander the Greek to make a new city and hold the lands around it in his name. They told the farmers and the shepherds that they were to be subject to this city, that their fields, flocks, and herds were no longer their own, but property of the citizens of this new place for whom they must work. The farmers and the shepherds could not hope to match the weapons and murderous skill of the newcomers, so did as they were told, and the colonists had the sense to leave them enough to feed their families. Such is the way of the world. Yet these Greeks were strange folk, who called their new city Thebes, and said that it was because there once had been a great city in the land of the Greeks of that name, until Alexander the Greek had destroyed it. They did not seem happy or sad when a few months later the news came that Alexander the Greek was most certainly dead, and they did not leave, but continued to build their city, quarrying stone from the hills rather than baking clay into bricks like sensible men. Many of them had brought women from half the world: Carians, Phoenicians, Egyptians, Persians, Bactrians, and Indians, as well as Greeks, and the rest took girls from the villages to be their wives, and that was as it should be. The settlers said that the brother of Alexander the Greek was now great king, and that the unborn son of Alexander the Greek would also be king, but that they no longer cared and wished only to live, and that seemed wise to the shepherds and the farmers. Yet kings arose throughout the lands and made war against each other, and in time 2 armies came. The settlers argued for many days, for such is the way of the Greeks, until they decided to arm themselves and join one of the kings, for thus, they said, their homes would be safer. They arrived late for the battle, when already corpses lay in heaps, and the carrion fowl were feasting, and one king, bloodied and weary, was rallying his bloodied and weary soldiers for a last stand. Yet the settlers came from behind the enemy army, and their attack was so sudden and so bold that the enemy panicked. The other king led a charge against the settlers and died on their spears, and his soldiers grew afraid and fled. It was a victory, as if that mattered, and the almost defeated king praised the settlers and renamed their city Nicopolis, which meant City of Victory in the Greek tongue. There were lots of cities with much the same name, and some were famous, and some were not. The shepherds and the farmers did not mind, and watched their animals, and tilled the hard earth, and were glad when the armies went away. The years passed, and the first settlers grew old and died. Some villagers were forced, and some chose to join them, while craftsmen, laborers, merchants, and slaves all came to the city and lived within its strong stone walls. They mingled together, and some worked hard, and some did not, and some had skill, and some did not. For a while more caravans came, while the armies stayed away, for Nicopolis was neither as wealthy nor as desirable as an outpost to make them scorn the strength of its walls. Though the disorderlies were gone, their descendants and the other inhabitants kept both their suspicion of great kings and their desire to be left alone. Kings and kingdoms rose and